What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the Box Basher here, and we're back with lucky number 13. Don't you know? Yeah, I'm kind of grinding away doing this gunpowder creeper farm, whatever you want to call it, and thought it'd be a good time to turn on the mic and just let it rip. You know, got some interesting things to think about and discuss with myself as per usual. Appreciate all the comments. Keep those coming. And if you're new here, then welcome. Yeah. So the first thing that I think is interesting is one of my commenters asked about a kind of universal measure of success, and I think it first comes, like as if could you tell somebody how successful they are, just based off of even their personal data to the nth degree even. So like he was even speaking about like their interactions with everybody, like this would be a universal metric of success. Kind of encompassing personality, probably other more shallow things, but it kind of considers everything. So is there a global way we can characterize success? I think at first in saying that, well, the first thing it really big depends on is the person's goals, right? Because I think we can all agree that those are individualized, right? Like individuals have very, very different goals. Some people want to be president. Some people want to play professional sports or something, and other people don't want to do any of that, or they want to be an artist or something. So I think keeping all the goals in mind, I think, is something very, very important to consider if we're talking about a universal success metric, right? I feel like it's not fair to make judgments. If someone's goal isn't to have a bunch of money, then that shouldn't be part of their assessment, right? How is that fair, right? I guess if we're going to take this out of the context of social success, right? We're speaking in a more abstract sense. I don't want to, because again, I don't think it's fair to, if somebody really doesn't care about if success to them is the ability to be an artist or something, or whatever the fuck they want to do, I don't know, unperturbed by anything else, then that's the measure of which that's their goals, right? That should be the metrics we base their success around, should be whether or not they're achieving their goals. So my proposition for this is, you could define success as the person, now given the constraints of their current situation, upbringing, resources, network, skills, all that into play, given that it's very much different. It's not equally distributed at birth. It's not like everyone's given the same set of skill points. Like in a video game, you're given, maybe you're given 20 skill points to dole out initially, right? I think it's fair to say that in the real world, some people get 60 skill points, some people get like 10, right? And then they ultimately don't get to pick what they distribute it on. Some people get, they max out their intelligence or their physicality trees, or whatever. I guess you can put it in the video game terms, but it's ultimately a lot of the same shit. I think I'm going to make a little tower here because it's obnoxious getting up and down. So given that points, the distribution of points is not fair, right? That's kind of a given. We have to base our measurement of their success or lack thereof on on how well they're achieving their goals, which are individual to them, based off of their constraints, right? So how effectively are they moving towards their goal, right? So if somebody's goal was to be an artist, right, and they would, they spend zero time trying to, or they want to be the best, they want to be the next Leonardo da Vinci, right? And they just kind of say that, but there's no discernible action being taken, right? And this, even internally, we're assuming we have all the variables, even on an internal level, right? Like what's going on in their head, what is taking up their mental real estate, right? That's also included, I think, in the success metric. But how well are they moving towards being the next Leonardo da Vinci, right? And is it efficient, right? So let's say that, they're working at a water park or something. Well, all right, there's a couple ways of looking at that. I guess on the surface, like, no, they're not. They're not, immediately moving towards their goals, but maybe they're using that time to get, something more out of that experience where they're, kind of mentally checked out and kind of always thinking and visualizing their next big art piece or something, right? And, are they making some kind of effort to, be thoughtful in their influence, right? Are they just selling their pieces for money? Or are they trying to, what's their end goal with their art career or something? I don't know. If they're just trying to sell them as NFTs and make a bunch of money, okay, maybe they're not. And if that's their idea of, Leonardo da Vinci, is it, he would have done the same thing in this day and age, then I guess it's fair. Then I guess they're being successful, right? And so I think it's such an individualized metric. It's obviously hard to grasp, but I honestly do think that this is an area where they're, with enough introspection and kind of thinking about your scenario and your day-to-day tasks and items that you're doing, you could kind of, self-analyze whether or not you're successful in your day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year ventures, right? So I think an athlete's an even better example. Let's say somebody wants to be a professional athlete or something, and it's like, okay, well, are you going to the gym every day? Are you lifting the weights? Are you doing all the practicing stuff that you need to do that, right? Is there more that could be done? Are you doing too much? Like, there's a lot more. You can kind of, it's easier to tell whether or not you're successful in your day-to-day efforts towards your goal. Because I think ultimately, whether or not you reach the goal of being a professional athlete or the next Leonardo da Vinci or whatever, a lot of that isn't up to you. It's kind of this idea of luck or coincidence, which is a whole other topic in itself. But and some of that's out of your control. But ultimately, maximizing your ability to be lucky, I guess, is one way of thinking about it, right? So it's not like you can make it harder for yourself to get lucky and get make it to the NFL or whatever. And you can also do the opposite and make it, be doing everything to put yourself in the best position possible, which, I think is ultimately what, your ideal pursuit of success would look like, would maximize your chances. So I think there's analyzation that can be done on whether or not your daily tasks are moving you towards those goals. Right? And I think for most people, they don't really know what their goals are long term. Maybe they have like nebulous ideas, but then, there's no really concrete goals, which is then it's okay. Well, then how do you define the measure of success, right? You could look at it in a more virtuistic sense or an ethical sense where it's, are they being, good or quote unquote bad, and they're, are they stealing from the homeless? Are they giving to, what I mean? Like, I suppose there's another way you can look at it through that lens, but I suppose I have a bone to pick with just the entire good and bad. Like, it's a whole meme that it's like relative, like the Hitler did nothing wrong or whatever. And to a certain extent, that is a little, it's ridiculous in the common sense way of thinking. But I mean, if we're speaking, in purely abstract terms, technically there is no like right or wrong, right? There's socially accepted and unaccepted, but then, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of debate over whether or not those should be a thing. Like, it's socially not accepted to, I don't know, like at one point it was socially acceptable to run around and say the N-word and no one gave a shit, right? And so what's to say in 10 years, you can't run around and say fuck, right? That's like the equivalent of saying the N-word or something, so it's socially unacceptable. So there's people that, like it or not, there's people that that truly believe there's nothing wrong going around spouting off the N-word. So those really measure of the social, if ethics are bound to social norms, they're flexible, like they're not concrete ideas or concrete rules that you can really write down and live by that last, right? They might last like 20 days, and then it kind of depends on the audience and the interpretation. Because if you're still in the audience of people who don't give a crap about saying the N-word or not, then it's ultimately doesn't apply in that social context. So then we're kind of abiding by whatever social rules are in place, in the group that we're in at this very moment, right? Or the group that you're a part of at this time, right? Which that's not really accurate or representative of the whole thing. So then it's like, okay, is it democratic? Do you take a democratic slice of, your average layman and, they decide really what's morally right and morally wrong, right? And then we're kind of forcing people towards specific, I don't know, you kind of lose the innovation there, like I talked about in the last episode with, or not the last episode, one of the last episodes, I don't remember, they're all kind of blending together at this point, but, so there's a, I don't know, there's a lot of issue that goes into trying to define, good and bad, right and wrong, and, since, that really just comes down to a point of a lot of conflict and really just in human history, right? As people just fundamentally disagree on what's right and what's wrong, murderers, there's certain murderers that just see nothing wrong with what they're doing, right? They can, we're just animals, I'm just killing some animals. It's like, you didn't, you stabbed a girl, like a 9-year-old girl. It's like, well, it's just an animal to me, it's my virtue ethics system. It's like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And I'm not condoning that. I don't think anyone would. But I guess if we're looking at it, again, in the purely abstract, it's like, okay, well, technically, like, it's just his moral framework, and And so then I guess it's like, okay, at what point, where do you draw the line? Because the line has to be drawn somewhere. You can't just, run around. You can't establish your own ethical or moral. I guess I'm kind of conflating morality and ethics. I don't have a whole epistemology lesson on what the subtle differences in I learned at one point, but I totally forgot what the exact differences were. Basically, I feel like you know what the fuck I'm talking about, right? Right or wrong, doing the good thing or the bad thing. And I think one is, if I remember correctly, one's like more of the social and one's like internal. I don't remember which one's which, but we're going to speak about the good and bad as it relates to your own self. Kind of the individual level, right? What's good and bad on that scale. And the rest we can just, I don't know. Because I guess there is kind of two ways of looking at it. I suppose on an individual level, if you really view humans as nothing more than mere animals, then murder is nothing, right? And there's no other thought that goes into that, which is terrifying, I think, if you're not, sociopathic in nature. But at the same time, that's like very much socially not accepted, at least in this day and age. I'm sure at one point you can call her a gypsy and murder her and no one cares. As fucked up as that is, we also lived in that kind of world. But these standards are changing regularly, and there's not really an up-to-date rule book on the way they work. I guess laws are one way we try to establish those, but I feel like it's it's well known that laws kind of suck at establishing solid framework for right and wrong, because there's stuff that's like, people would generally say lying is wrong, you shouldn't lie, but it's totally legal to lie. You can just blatantly lie to somebody. It's not against the law. And I think that's like, oh, that's fair, like, because, if lying is illegal, then, like, that's a slippery slope, right? It's tough. You can think of a lot of scenarios where you kind of need to lie, but then if it's illegal, like, and so, I don't know, I think to me, it seems reasonable that it shouldn't be illegal, but ultimately, I don't think anyone would agree that it's, like, right, morally right. I guess if we're, again, going to speak at the layman's framework. But I don't know. I think if somebody really struggles to have their own sense of moral compass, because I think we all have our own, I don't want to say innate, because it's hard to view it that way, and it's more dynamic than it is like this statically given innate birthright that you like think this is right and think this is wrong. It's more complex than that, I would think. But I think we all have our own general ideas on what's good and what's bad based off of both our nature and our nurture in terms of our upbringing and whatnot. And that's why you see so many serial killers that had like these fucked up childhoods. And you'd think, and if somebody in your situation, if you were in their exact same scenario, what's to say it's unreasonable to think that you wouldn't end up messed up like that, right? I don't know. But then it kind of brings into the point, at what point do we start blaming people for stuff where is nothing ever anyone's fault, right? Because it's like, oh, well, Jeffrey Dahmer had a tough childhood, so it's okay that he killed everyone. It's like, all right, well, again, we have to draw the line somewhere. And I guess it's tough for me because I'm a big gray area guy, obviously. And, drawing a line in the sand is oftentimes a slippery slope, given that it kind of implies one thing that implies it next, and then next thing you know, you reach this kind of unreasonable conclusion where it's like, how the hell did we get here, right? This seems ridiculous. But ultimately it began with, the beginning. So I guess in some sense you had to try to find a way to put bounds around ideas that are slippery slopes, right? Try to contain the implications of such a thing. And I guess that's why the law is so convoluted, because they're constantly trying to do that. They're just trying to juggle not making something such a slippery slope that it has like totally unintended consequences and ends up fucking everybody up, and everyone's like, why the fuck did you guys not see this coming? And it's really hard to see all of it coming. Like I'll give props to the lawmakers in the sense that it's not always entirely straightforward what the implications of something will be, especially with the changes in technology wise. Like the laws around technology suck ass. Like there's a whole third party doctrine thing. I don't want to get totally into the law because I'm not really that interested in it. I'm interested in the sense that it's applicable to us and people, but it's not something that's like super interesting for me to dive in and talk about the nitty gritty, because ultimately I'm closer to saying that the legal system's a fucking joke than I am to like swear by, oh, well, in 1965 they passed this law. It's like, well, the laws are just, think of it like in terms of pirate code, they're more like guidelines than actual rules. Which, it's just kind of a funny way to look at it, but at the same time, it's, again, there's things that are illegal that probably, are right, so then again, you are kind of subjected to your own moral compass and framework to guide your decision making. That's ultimately where decisions come from. But I think my big issue is that humans individually are not, like, for the most part, and there's exceptions to a lot of this, for the most part, we're not logic-driven creatures. We're emotionally driven, right? And I think we tend to misrepresent our actions and our ideas as, logically driven, when a lot of times they're emotionally driven and then logically self-rationalized, right? So, this is a bad example because it's obvious to see why this is a problem. But like you buy like you buy a blender or something on Amazon, and it's like, it was kind of an impulse buy, I guess at heart. But then you're like, okay, well, no, I'm gonna need a blender, and then I need to blend stuff, right? I'm gonna make smoothies every morning. I'm gonna obviously, it's like, and then it's a good investment too. It's like, even if it's, I can always return it, right? Okay, it's like, all right, it's not a bad thing. And then like nothing else, I'll just repackage it and give it to my friend for their wedding or something. It's like, it's a good purchase. It's not a, and in reality, it's just like, you just thought this blender, like you thought a smoothie sounded good. And you're like, no, it's not reasonable to go buy a smoothie every time I want a smoothie. I'm just going to buy a blender and then buy some frozen fruit. And it's like, no, like ultimately you made an emotional decision to just buy the blender. And again, and it wasn't completely illogical. It was just more emotional than it was logical. And now you're just kind of self-rationalizing because, you want to feel better about your decision. But the idea that it was a entirely logical purchase, I don't buy it, right? And I think that's true for a lot more than just buying a blender, right? Even, bigger decisions, in terms of who I'm going to, marry, or what I'm going to major in, or what job I want, right? It's like, you like a product from some company. Well, I'm going to go work for them. And they're like, it's like, well, it's actually a really good job. And it's like, okay, well, no, maybe you're just kind of, and I'm not saying it's not. These are cases where you're like, the person's kind of blatantly in denial of their, otherwise boneheaded decision. But I think a lot of times it's more gray than that. In the sense where, it might appear logical, but ultimately, like, at heart, it's an emotional decision. And again, there's nothing really, how do you prevent that? I don't know. I'm not saying that you have to. But I think recognizing that more often than not, we do make decisions that are entirely emotional. And we self-rationalize after because we want to feel good about our decisions. And that's normal. Not to say that we have to try and fix our brain chemistry, but that's just how we're wired. And I think more than anything, being aware of that is where the power and the importance lies. Being aware that you don't make entirely logical decisions all the time. Like, you make some illogical decisions because emotionally you want to do that more often than you think. So even if you think you made a logical decision, it, on the surface it may appear that, but in reality it's not. And I guess it kind of comes into a very, very important virtue that a virtue that I think is very, very important. And is, I don't know if it's lacking more in today's day and age or is just ignored. But it's self-awareness. I think there's a lot of people that, I'm sure that you can people pop into your head when you think of somebody that just lacks self-awareness. Oh, you fucker. That lacks self-awareness. But it's, to me, it's truly I don't know, it's a more rare, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's a more rare trait than I would hope. And it generally comes down to people being not self-aware of their own ignorance to something. So they share their ideas on some highly debated topic because they think they're a genius. When I think the self-aware approach should be to, okay, well, this problem's a lot more complex than I might think it is. Maybe it looks simple, but I'm aware of my own knowledge, and I'm aware that there's probably a lot more decisions that go into this, because it's always easy to some person in authority makes a decision. You're like, what an idiot. What a dumb decision. You're not even thinking about this and that. And it's easy to immediately just think that they're stupid and they made the dumb decision because they're stupid. Versus okay, well, I understand that it's probably a lot more complicated than I think it is. There's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes that I don't think. And for that reason, while I can be skeptical and have my doubts, it's ultimately smarter and more self-aware of me to just shut the fuck up and only really make judgments if I have more holistic information versus just kind of jumping to a conclusion based off of limited information that I have. And I see this a lot in like science. People have a tendency now to just absorb popcorn science, which is a whole nother topic of just one of my pet peeves, just like popcorn science being fucking stupid. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say popcorn science, I'm just talking about like these random little one-off facts that people just use in arguments to, think like, you're more likely to be killed by a refrigerator than a shark. It's like, okay. And that's like, all of a sudden they're an expert on sharks because they know this like one little stupid popcorn fact. It's the facts that you see in like these little short videos or like top 10 facts about the ocean that you didn't know, or top 10. And it doesn't have to do with just ocean facts. I'm talking about literally everything. Top 10 things you didn't know about taxes. And all of a sudden, like, you watch this video and you're some finance guru or something, top 10 things you know about the stock market. And then you're like, pick and choose 2 or 3 of these, popcorny little ideas. And all of a sudden that they're some fucking genius. You're still a moron. Like, you still know nothing, right? And there's people that have dedicated years and years of study and research into understanding something and have only scratched the surface. And yet, you see one BuzzFeed video and all of a sudden you are, a gynecologist. It's like, what the, like, that truly is another, is more evidence of just the, an issue of self-awareness. And it's people like, you watch one fucking video and all of a sudden you're a genius. I think it takes somebody who's really self-aware and who's, unfortunately it takes a certain amount of intelligence to understand that, I'm probably too stupid to get this. I probably have not, there's people with PhDs in this stuff that only claim to know less than 0.5% of what there is to know about a certain topic. And, here I am declaring everybody else stupid because I watched a video on it, a nicely animated video, with a British voiceover. So, I don't know. I think popcorn science as a whole is just so detrimental to actual like learning and education, because it's just these like little fun, small, digestible facts that are super easy to learn and like repeat to friends. And I understand the marketing appeal, right? It's fun to have like little interesting facts and tidbits about fucking whatever, but it's like it gives you just enough information about something to make some wildly inaccurate claim, or ultimately to give people enough confidence to have an opinion on something, which is dangerous because opinions are like, what's the quote? Like, opinions are like buttholes. Everyone's got one, and all it is just shit or something. I don't know. There's some quote about that that's funny. If you remember, you can put it in the comments. But it's like no one had. We're not in a shortage of opinions here. Like, and oftentimes the loudest ones are the dumbest. And I think popcorn science as a marketing tactic, because that's ultimately what I view it as. It's not a learning tool. It's marketing. Top 10 facts is a really nice juicy video to click on. It gives you a nice variety and nice depth, which is almost none because it's surface level shit. But it gives, just enough to click on stuff. But I think it's to the detriment of more civil discourse and truly, I'm not going to say scientific reasoning, but even just any kind of reasoning as a whole. Popcorn science really just works against what I think is in the best interest of us as a intelligent species trying to learn more about our situation, right? I don't know. It's something else I view very, very negatively. And and it ultimately aids and abets in this behavior of lack of self-awareness and ignorance and thinking they understand something, right? So I don't know. I guess in that same vein, just because the words begin the same, self-awareness and self-control are another. Self-control is another big topic that I think is important and is something that is something I work to develop. So, what do I mean by self-control? Well, I mean the ability to control oneself, right? Control your own behavior, not just in like a physical or like, bad habits sense, although that's part of it. I think there are certainly people that struggle with self-control as it relates to, having bad habits. So like, not smoking or vaping or something, I don't know. Whatever that habit might be for that person. But I even think for, it plays a key role in, like motivation. Trying to understand what environment you are motivated and can do things in, and your ability to control what you do in order to motivate yourself towards whatever your goals are. Like we talked about, success as some vaguely quantifiable metric, but ultimately to me, especially if we're going to analyze how well you're moving towards your, damn, that looks kind of sick, how well you're moving towards your goals, you kind of have to include, a big part of that I think is thinking about your ability to control your own environment and what you're doing, right, and how you're acting and responding and what activities you're taking part in, right, and that's a big piece of self-control. Also I think where it applies a lot is like diet. People just eat like shit, and I do too, to a certain extent, just because it's so, the world's not making it easier for you to exhibit self-control, at least in the areas of having a better diet. So I obviously realize that it's especially difficult in today's day and age, but it is something of a good example of where that can be controlled or lack thereof, where it kind of lacks a lot of control. It's certainly a very broad topic, and it's hard to think about how to improve self-control. But again, to me, I think it really comes down to self-awareness, right? And I promise I'm not just trying to intertwine these just because they're the same, but I think that the more you understand yourself and your own desires and your own impulsions, the better chance you might have to influence and control your behavior, right? So something about myself that I know is I have a sweet tooth. I like sweet stuff, and the availability of sweet things plays a role in how much of them that I eat, right? I remember I went like this whole summer having very, very few desserts and things because I made a very conscious effort to not have them accessible, right? They're very, I didn't let myself off the hook to go, impulse buy anything, right? So I didn't. Versus, now I think I've regressed a little bit, admittedly, because the availability is right there. I mean, it's, I think my first mistake was buying like Gatorade protein bars, which if you don't know, they're like, they have protein in them, but they're basically a fucking candy bar. I mean, there's no sugar coating it. I mean, they're probably coated in sugar, but ultimately there's no sugar coating the fact that they're practically candy bars. That's how sweet they are. And, that kind of just opens the floodgates to an extent. And then also the fact that, if you're in New York, you got the best cheesecake around. And I got to try the different cheesecakes, right? I'm not going to just not try them. So I have, every excuse in the world to go out and do it. Same with pizza, right? Got good pizza. Got to try the pizza. And it's like, well, do I really need to be eating pizza all the fucking time? Like, and I realize, okay, well then part of me is like, well, stop being a dick to yourself and, enjoy life. YOLO, right? The thing about, you do only live once. That's true, 100%. The issue is life's probably a little bit longer than you think at, age 20 or, however old the person watching this video is. I'd assume I don't have a big audience of, middle-aged 58, 70-year-olds, whatever. Generally, when you're young, you don't think your life's going to be that long. And if you truly don't think that, you might end up, making it shorter without going any further on what I mean by that. But, certainly I think you got to play the long game to an extent, right? And you don't want to play the long game to the point where you don't ever enjoy anything because your life sucks and you're miserable all the time. That's not what I mean. But certainly more of a longer term investment than many people make, I think, is a smart move. And especially not creating bad habits where eating pizza all the time and cheesecake just because it's here and it's good stuff. Like, yeah, it's good, but but understanding that I fall victim to that all the time is one thing. And that's a really easy thing. I think most people are very aware of their diet shortcomings, but they just either don't care or have other priorities. Like, there was a point in time where I didn't really care because I was under so much other stressors that I was like, all right, I'm just going to sacrifice my physical body for the next 3 months just to get through this period of time. Just because there was so much other stuff going on, which is fair. I think that's a fine deal to make. But ultimately, I made the deal for 3 months with the understanding that there's going to be a point in time where I need to say, all right, nope, we gotta go back and I don't know, create more sustainable habits. And I think there's a certain amount of fluctuation that goes into that. I've been better and I've been a lot worse than I am now. And I'm not going to be perfect ever, really, but a conscious effort to understand and be aware of that is something I view as a good long-term investment. I don't know. I'm hopefully not wrongfully so, but I'm aware that is a place where a lot of people forget. Not even that they forget, but they just don't care, or they don't make a conscious effort to do something, right? Even if it's, because it's a never-ending game. It's not like I can, knock it out in a couple weeks or a day, or it's not like an assignment where I can just like, all right, have a perfect diet. Okay, check, done. It's like, no, it's an ongoing, really never-ending thing, so there's not a lot of glory in it. And if you have to do everything for some sense of glory, or, some stuff is just work, right? It's not, there's no way you can make it as, exciting or thrilling or, risk-taking as you want, especially as a young person. It's just work. It's boring. It's tedious. It sucks, but it's especially important. I'm not talking about actual, I go to job work. I'm talking about like doing your laundry, taking a shower, right? I mean, you can probably find ways to enjoy it. But in itself, by itself, it's not a ridiculously rewarding activity. So there's every reason to just neglect it because it sucks, right? I don't want to take out the trash. It's like, okay, then you have to live in a cesspool of shit, and then, there's implications that go far beyond you just like, well, I don't care that it's messy. Well, I don't care that I smell like shit. It's okay, well, at some point somebody will, and ultimately I view it as like, all right, I'm just gonna. Ultimately, it's not that hard. It doesn't require that much willpower to just do and create a habit of doing. And once you've made it a habit, it just does itself, honestly, most of the time. I actually enjoy doing my laundry. I realize I'm a weirdo for that, but I just was make it a habit to. I like having clean stuff. It's nice. But some people don't. I think even there's stuff I don't really enjoy doing. But you got to if you make a habit of it, you're more likely to do it. You can kind of condition yourself to an extent. So kind of gamify the aspect of self-control, which is, it's not an exact science, but it's, it's as good as you can get, I guess, to a certain extent. So, I don't know, self-control, self-awareness go hand in hand, or to me, they're very important. I don't know if you call them virtues or tenets of, I guess, successful living or good living. I mean, I don't know. Successful, again, it's kind of a hard term. I don't ever want to be like imposing my standards of quality or success to other people, because that's not really fair, right? It's like there are certain things that you value. It's not really fair to just apply those other people as on a blanket level. And, they're a piece of shit because they don't do X, Y, Z, Not to say that some, ideals or virtues or tenets that people have are stupid, right? If it's like, I don't associate with people who don't have 3 Lamborghinis. It's like, all right, well, I don't want to hang out with that person sucks. Like, go fuck yourself. Well, it's my virtue. I just, appreciate fine taste and art and fashion or something. But you can't, just because it's something that you find really important, you can't really impose it on other people. But, that being said, there's also social tenets of like social virtues, in the sense it's like hygiene is one, right? Like, okay, fine. Maybe if that's not one of your personal virtues, like socially it's accepted that you will be more well appreciated if you don't smell like a dumpster, right? Whether you individually agree with that or not, if you want to participate in society, and you can't be mad that people look at you weird. Like, and if you want to accept it, okay, someone's gonna look at me like I'm fucking drunk all the time because I smell like a shithole. Then if you want to live with that, then you ultimately can't complain about it. Like, you can't complain about decisions that you consciously make, right? So it's like, okay, if you're willing to sacrifice that, then fine. That's the way you got to live. And I mean, the one way I've sacrificed, just to give an example, so I'm not just acting in purely hypotheticals, is like the way I dress. I don't give a shit, right? And I could certainly impress a lot more people if I made a conscious effort to, have, I guess, more fashionable clothing, if I took time to pick out what I'm wearing. But it's something that I don't personally care for. But on the other side of that, I am absolutely ready to accept, criticism and get weird looks because I'm wearing a shirt with a hole in it, right? I mean, I take a shower. I'm not going to sacrifice that part. So, I mean, I'm not, not disgusting in that sense. But somebody who really values, wearing nice clothes and being fashionable, I'm probably not going to click that well with, because they're going to look at what I'm wearing and go, what the fuck? Are you homeless? Did you sell your clothes, or did your house burn down or something? And to me, I'm ready to accept that as it's like, fair enough. Yep, I understand why you think that. I'm ready to accept it. So I have no reason to like bitch about it, right? I can't impose that. Like, well, if you think fashion's important and you enjoy wearing high quality stuff, like, you're a loser. It's like, who am I to like make these? I can't make that kind of statement. That's not fair. I can't. I don't know. Like, I think you just can't impose standards on other people. I think people, really, they love doing that, thinking that they're righteous, or what they believe and think is better. And I don't know, maybe it's better in the sense that more people agree with it, but there's a lot of things that most people agree with that is fucking stupid. I wish I had a good example. I don't know. Most people think McDonald's is good food. Stupid. I mean, like anything with enough like butter and sugar is going to taste good, right? It's not like some, complex science, I guess. I mean, I don't know. There's better examples out there. I'm not really, I don't put a ton of effort into conjuring up great examples for these kind of discussions, because I don't plan any of this out. I hope if I did, it'd be pretty embarrassing, considering how just off the fucking rails this is. But yeah, there's certainly examples where most people agree on something where I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Like, if you like, I don't care that most people do this, I still think it's stupid. Fortnite, another one. So like, I mean, I don't, I'm being nitpicky here, but I don't know. I think imposing your standards of your own personal standards of virtue and success is a mistake. It's something I think I fall into a lot, where I kind of expect people to have the same expectations when it comes to their coursework or their work or their relationships or just their things. It's it runs into some problems where I'm like disappointed, or I expected more, I guess. Like, one thing is I show up very early to everything. I don't know why. I don't have some traumatic late experience where I was late. I'm just always super early. And of course I'm going to say this, and then my next thing I'm going to be late for, but I'm always really early. That's just something I've always been early. I always like being early. I hate having to sit there and wait, but I'm always early. It's just it's a habitual thing. I'm just blatantly early always. And other people don't. Some people are just late all the time, right? And that obviously pisses me off, because I'm early, so I'm fucking here. I'm waiting. Let's go. But some people just, but the thing is, I can't. While I personally would think, it's better to be early than late. So I think I agree with my situation or my beliefs more than yours, because I think it's better to be early than late. Ultimately, there's only so much I can get mad at somebody for when they're late. And a certain amount of it's just okay. I'm someone that lives and dies by being early. So that's just who I am. I've had to accept that not everyone is like that, and I can't really run around and get mad at everyone else for not being super early all the time. Because that's, again, it's not. I don't know. Some people they don't value that. They don't value being early. I always think of it as I respect somebody else's time enough to just be super early and not give any question whether or not I'm going to show. It's always the worst thing when you guys are waiting on someone. You're like, are they going to show up, or should we go, or I don't know, what do we do? We wait, or we called him yet? Call him, see if he's on the way, or something. Versus if you're just early all the time, you're your box is checked. You're like, okay, yeah, you're here, cool. Versus oh, they're showing up, or where are they at? I don't know. That's just something that I think I'm at fault for a lot. It's just expecting everyone to be super early when they just don't operate on the same schedule I do. And I don't know, the other thing is just work quality. There's a lot of things I don't even realize that I do when it comes to turning something in, whether this is for a job or for school or anything. There's certain checks and things that I'll do to make sure it's kind of meets. It's like a quality assurance check. I have my built-in little quality assurance things, right? File format, naming scheme, page numbers, all that. Whatever it is, it could be. Even if it's an Excel sheet, there's still kind of these intrinsic quality assurance checks that I do for myself. And a lot of people just don't do that. They just kind of roll, they're all right, well, I'm done. And they submit it oh, well, is your name on it? Oh, fuck, I don't know. It's okay. That, and especially in a project setting, this is where that comes up, where I'm I kind of expect other people to have an equally vigorous quality assurance check when, unfortunately, most of the time they either don't have one or it's shit. So then I always, I'm kind of worked up about, oh, well, fucking, did he put our fucking name on it, for God's sakes? Like, we're going to get a 0 because this clown doesn't know what, good work is, And in another sense where it's, maybe I'm right. Maybe mine is better. I obviously think it's better to have kind of this high level of quality assurance, but I don't know, maybe the time they save in not checking their work is more time they spend working on it. I don't know. There's a way you could spin it where I'm the idiot here too. But it's just, I don't necessarily think it's fair for me to impose my standards of that onto other people. And I think, that's where this awareness and individuality come into play, where it's like I have to understand that each person has their own kind of value system and, ideas on what they value and put their efforts towards it are probably a lot different than mine. So I can only be so frustrated when someone doesn't align with my interests and values. So I don't know. It's just like I'm not even sure what the hell I was talking about. I was talking about like self-awareness and self-control. For me, that comes into play with self-awareness. Like if you lack the self-awareness to realize that you're in a world with other intelligent beings with their own intelligent thoughts. Maybe you don't see them as equally intelligent or not. Maybe they're lesser. I don't know, whatever your superiority complex is. But ultimately they're just as, kind of obliged to their beliefs as you are yours. So, who are you to, tell anyone that they're stupid, right? I don't know. I still tell people they're stupid all the time, I guess in my head, but, which I think is fair. Like, I think thinking something and acting on it is two totally different things, right? Like I covered this a little bit in like the whole fucked up thoughts thing. Having fucked up thoughts, I think, is totally normal in the same sense where I can like think, you are so fucking stupid. Like you are just a dunce. How do you get anything done ever? Versus just like externally saying, I believe you have a different value system that does not align very well with mine, right? It's a very, very nice way of externally saying you're a complete moron, and I'm embarrassed to be breathing the same air that you do, because that is how below I see you, versus just being like, well, we kind of see things differently. It's the PR way of telling someone they're an idiot. Because ultimately maybe I talked about this in the whole bot thing, but a lot of people are fucking stupid too. They say like the one way to realize, that is think about how smart the average American is. All right, so your average American. Now realize that half the people are dumber than that, and that just kind of paints a picture of like, wow, I thought, I think that a lot of people are stupid. It's like, well, there's a lot more that you don't see that are even worse. So I don't know. I still think regardless of how dumb somebody's opinions are, you still have to provide them a certain amount of respect externally. I think internally, all bets are off. I think I'm a legally and morally and psychologically okay to rip them to shreds, like in my head, right? Like in terms of like thinking about how dumb their opinion is. But, vocalizing that opinion and articulating it, A, is not going to do any good. Like, you're not going to make them smarter by telling them how stupid they are. You're just not. But B, I think that's also kind of off limits, to a certain extent. You can obviously express that you disagree, but, there's certainly a way you have to do that where it's not like your true unfiltered thoughts, which are generally probably not the most positive thing. But, I don't know. That's kind of my take on stupid people. But anyway, we're pretty much closing in on the time. Made some decent progress on this creeper build. It's gonna be sweet once this thing is done. I think I still have Whoops, that was a fail. I think I still have a bunch more resource generation or gathering to do, but it is it's coming along nicely. You'll see this, hopefully this full build in episode 32 dropping soon. Anyway, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Peace out.